Well, good afternoon and welcome to what I believe, and I've probably lost count as always, is probably the fourth or the fifth session of Beyond Borders with CyberX in celebration of International Women's Day, Breaking the Bias. It's very important that we reflect on why this day is important. And I would like to mention that when you think about breaking the bias, I'd like to remind you that when you look at each other, when you see others around you, look at people. Look beyond race, look beyond class, look beyond all other social constructs. And speaking about looking beyond all other social constructs, this discussion right now is going to focus on a subject of gamification and cybersecurity. And in one way, how does gamification make cybersecurity more accessible to everybody around us? When I think about gamification, I think about games, I remember something that my father often would tell me. I used to watch a lot of football and cricket, and he would tell me, son, football is a game of mistakes. The person that wins or the team that wins is the team that makes the least amount of mistakes. And when I think about gamification and cybersecurity, I think about a safe space for people to learn, a safe space for people to make mistakes, continue their practice, continue on the journey, not the destination that is cybersecurity, and continue on winning as they learn to go through different scenarios. My name is Abbas Hirji, and welcome to this session. Many of you might know me as the lead for AI and cybersecurity at Durham College, but for today, I play the humble position of your host. I do want to make it aware that I am joining in from Canada, and this is Indigenous land, and many folks that are watching from around the world. It is important that we recognize this, and more importantly, if you're joining virtually, we should also recognize the virtual space as Indigenous space, as our cables, our fiber optic lines all run across this land and sea. Without further ado, I'm going to ask my esteemed guests to introduce themselves, and more importantly, when they introduce themselves, give us one reason why they are interested in this concept of gamification and cybersecurity. Mary, let's start with you. Welcome to this session. Tell us a little bit about what you do and why is gamification important to you?
Hello, happy to be here today. So I have 12 years of experience in cybersecurity and technology, from the government space to private sector, working in casinos, and now working for a major security vendor in this space. I've done everything from network engineering to vulnerability management to architecture, getting started in sales. And outside of that, I also run the Women's Society of Cyberjutsu, a national nonprofit organization with their roots in the States, but we have an international presence, and we provide hands-on training to women and girls around the world to get them interested in cybersecurity space. And one of the things that we like to do is we like to have games, because we know that when women are able to put their hands on keyboard and actually solve a challenge, it makes them, they feel empowered, right? And so that's why I think gaming is really important in this space, because it gives people the opportunity that may not have the opportunity to explore cybersecurity, test out the skills that they probably didn't even know they had, and then do something important, and then translate those skills to the workforce. I remember my first experience with cyber games was Cyber Olympics, ages ago. And I was just like, I have no clue what I'm doing. And as soon as, the team, we figured out some of the challenges, it was like, I can do this. I like this. And plus I like puzzles and challenges anyway. So it worked out. So that's what I think it's important. We gamify cybersecurity.
Mary, thank you for that. And I really like that little note that you made around when you know what you do not know. And suddenly you hit upon, hold on a second, when you looked at a problem in a different way, used a different set of tools to solve a problem, you realize what your strengths are. Mary, thank you for that. And I'm looking forward to diving deeper into this discussion with you. And Mary, just for our audience, where are you joining in from?
I am calling from Las Vegas, Sin City, so come visit.
Absolutely. When this blasphemous thing that I like to call in-person conferences comes back, that'll be one of the first places we shall come to. Now I'm going to take a flight to, I don't know where. Jessica, where are you joining us from?
DC, over by DC, Northern Virginia.
That's a long flight, but I'll take it. I'll come to DC. Jessica, introduce yourself to our audience and tell us why gamification is important to you in the space of cybersecurity.
Absolutely. Hello, everybody. I am Jessica Gulick, and I have somewhere around, let's say, more than 20 years. I'll stop counting there in cybersecurity. I've done my time in certification and accreditation, security assessments, and penetration testing, and a variety of different other programs as more of a program manager and more on the strategy side, writing cyber strategy for federal agencies and organizations. And then took a turn in my career and went into marketing. And really, it was more for me than marketing. It was about building communities. And that is where I found my passion for cybersecurity games. And I'm on a mission now to make cyber really a sport. And I'd love to build on what Mary said, in that the beauty of cybersecurity is that it truly is a team sport. And I think that's why we talk about diversity. We talk about high performing teams, et cetera. And that sport allows us to have some really key metrics that help to define levels of skill set and competencies. But it also makes it fun when you play a game. So my day job, I founded a growth company with two distinct missions. We help cybersecurity and IT firms grow, but we also drive highly skilled and diverse cyber workforce through games. And that is where I founded something called the US Cyber Games and the US Cyber Team, which is a program that scouts the first ever traveling sports cyber esports team that competes internationally. And of course, I serve as president of the board for Mary at the Women's Society of Cyberjutsu. So thank you for having me today. I'm really excited.
The pleasure is all mine. And I think, again, the key word there was strategy. I've always mentioned this to my students and the different companies that I work with, that strategy is the art of knowing what not to do. And clearly, Jessica has understood very well what not to do and has gone with surgical precision into very interesting areas of cybersecurity. And I'm looking forward to diving deep into this. So we've got about 35 odd minutes. And I want to first set the context for our audience and allow them to understand, what do we mean by gamification? Now, many of you might remember, for example, some time ago in Sweden, they were trying to get people like me to use the stairs more. So what did they do? They didn't just tell you use the stairs. They turned the stairs into a piano-like step, where if you would step on different steps, it would make a certain sound. And suddenly it made going up the stairs a lot of fun. I don't know if it would convince me. I have not been to Sweden. Please feel free to send me the conference. But you get the point. It suddenly introduces a level of fun into an act or a practice that typically could be a little boring or very mundane or routine. So let's think about that for a moment. And Jessica, I'll start off with you. When you think about why gamification is important to cybersecurity, you gave us some input into that. Can you tell us a step or two that you had taken at the initial phases to introduce gamification into this world of security? Jessica?
So, absolutely. It's funny. I was trying to think back when you asked me the question about when did I realize that cybersecurity really could be gamified? And I think it was the opportunity I had to go with our pen testing team to San Francisco on an actual pen test. And it was throughout that visit that I realized that a really good penetration test is like a really good heist. And it takes a diverse set of skills and strategy and planning and sharing of the risk, if you will, to explore the network, to understand what the possibilities are on the passwords. I remember one point somebody on the team telling me, because I asked them, I thought it was crazy. I was watching them do all this, and they set up all the computers, but the people themselves would change seats, not the computers. Right. And so what is going on? And they're like, we get one chance. We get one chance to get in before the system reboots. So we're going to do best athlete. I'm really good at this. She's really good at that. So we take turns. And I think that was the realization for me, that this is a team sport. This is a team game, and it's kind of fun. I don't know about you, but I like watching the heist movies, right? So I grew up on those. So that was kind of the point. There are some wonderful uses of gamification to interest people. Yep. I would say on the security awareness side as well. as the actual skill side. So there's almost two kinds of games out there, the security awareness and then cyber skills themselves. And I think it's fascinating to watch this market grow.
I think again, you made that point about team, and I've always said this in other conferences that if you want to go fast, you go alone. You want to go far, you go together. And I think these games bring that element of togetherness into this. I know in the green room, Jessica, we were talking about the sponsors of this session, Esports Cyber, and I think that tabletop exercise, which introduces the sort of Dungeons and Dragons kind of environment also, and the Monopoly kind of like environment into cybersecurity, will be interesting areas for us to explore. So I know beyond this conference, we will have a lot to work on together. Working on what you said, Jessica. Mary, I want to come to you. Jessica elocuted very well how powerful gamification can be to the learning process, the active learning and engagement process in cybersecurity. When you introduce these gamification concepts, how was it received by the community? Was it seen as something that, whoa, this is a little left field? How exactly was it absorbed by those around you?
Honestly, they liked it, right? Some were scared, right? But I think if you played games growing up, like I played Nintendo, I had an Atari. My favorite thing was Mario because that was the easiest I could play, and Tetris. But having seen that as a child, in some respects, and then they see it as an adult, it's like, oh, wait a minute, I might be able to do this. And then it's people that are playing the games that look like them, and so that also helps bring in more folks and helps folks feel like maybe I can do this, not even realizing that, hey, if I go and do this, I have these skill sets that I can translate into a role. It's more about that community. It's about that team. And then once they're in there playing, once the women, we would see women all the time that, as soon as they got something, they found that flag and it's like, holy cow, like I did that, me, and then that light bulb and that joy that comes from them is just like, wow, when they're working together and the team gets it and then they win, it's like, oh, I can actually do this.
If I can just build from there, I think one of the other elements, so for example, you mentioned Cyber Olympics in your introduction, and I remember hosting the 2019 finals out here at Durham College. And there were two very interesting observations that I made. Number one, and I say this quite a bit, is when I looked at all of the teams, I would say, if the average team had about 5 people in them, probably 3 were on the IT security side. The other 2 probably came from philosophy, and then the other individual would look at me, and when I talked about, so what did you study? He said, don't let your education come in the way of your learning. So I had to go to university or college. Well said, but they were the main practitioners in the team. And the second thing that I found very interesting, and Jessica, maybe I'll bring this to you, is on the aspect of rewards and awards. Have you found that, for example, the concepts around badging, the concepts around giving away different trophies, how has that motivated people to engage deeper in different concepts around cyber?
Absolutely. It's the same thing as in games as you see it in cybersecurity. It's the idea of little successes, right? It's that you don't have to learn it all. You can learn it in bits. And I think that's what games like to do, is kind of take you on a journey. Right. And that journey allows you to collect the points or the badges or the awards as you go. And it also allows you, and this is where I'll bring in a little bit of the sports piece of it. So we talk a lot about the gamification, but I do think there's a sports element. In sports and track and field, you're always looking for what we call a PR. Right? A personal record. And I think we have that opportunity in cybersecurity with these small wins, with these awards and badges, is to build on a skill set and a competency as you grow.
Can I add to that?
Yeah, absolutely, Mary.
So I think too with the badges, because we see them a lot on LinkedIn and on Twitter, it's a sense of pride. Like it says, I worked hard for this. Here I'm showcasing this to you. Right. And then with the badges now, they have skills that directly link to work roles. And so now it's not just I won this, I got this badge, I solved this challenge. It's now I can actually do this in the field, and it's small challenges, and it doesn't matter if you're in tech or not in tech. Right? It gives you that opportunity to learn this space, even if you just want to know some basic stuff. You get that opportunity through games.
Yeah, and I think that's super important, right? Play, and I'm sure all of you have read, and to our audience, I really think those statements around why play is important, and that ability to have a safe space to make mistakes, and ask questions in a manner that doesn't necessarily make you look foolish, but just gets you to say, look, I want to get to the next stage. How exactly do I do this? Now, I should practice what I preach, because my memory goes back to my early formative years in Dubai, when my mom and dad would try and play PlayStation with me, and I'd get very frustrated when they would not understand the various controls. Mom, Dad, if you're watching from Dubai, I heart you. You have done for me. But staying on topic, Mary, a quick question for you, and then we'll go back to Jessica. Mary, when it comes to thinking about how you build these gamified scenarios, I've always been a believer that a delayed game is better than a rushed game. It takes time to build these scenarios. It takes time to build these concepts, whether it's a CTF concept with some gamification into it, whether it's whatever it may be, whether it's a tabletop like esports cyber, what Jessica's doing. Mary, how do you go about planning to build games? Do you think about the software piece, about where you're going to host the game, or is it about the scenarios?
So it's a little bit of both. Okay. You need a place to host it. And there's a number of different places where you can host these things. But what's cool about building your own CTFs and your own games, something that we have a team that does periodically, it actually helps you learn about what's going on, right? And so you have to plan, okay, what kind of challenges do we want? Do we want offensive or defensive? Do we want policy-based challenges? Do we want super easy, like 2 + 2 is 4, or do we want, the square root of 52 type of questions? You have to think about who your audience is going to be. Then you have to think about how long it's going to be. Do you want people to be able to watch it? So you have to figure out platforms to watch. So I think Discord lets you do that. And I think there's a couple of other Twitch and some of the other sites. And then you have to get folks interested to want to help you build this stuff out, and then want to play the games, right? And then it can't just stop there. You've got to think about prizes, and I think like promotions, and what is the purpose of this game, and how are these folks going to benefit, whether or not they win this competition. I think Jessica has a little bit more experience building. I let the other team do that.
I think these are important elements as well, because I've also found that as I've started to get involved, for example, esports cyber and the tabletop exercise, and I remember the first version of the game, which was released 2 weeks ago, and then we all had a watch party, and we watched it on Discord. I think it was Discord, Twitch. We watched it on YouTube. We watched it on cyberexchange.ca, where people are watching this live at this moment. And I found that it created a little bit of an identity. It created a little bit of a culture. And suddenly everybody, when the game was marketed, everybody wanted their own avatar. Now, I'm not going to go down the alleyway of NFTs because I could, but everybody suddenly wanted to aspire to be like, I want to look like the way I look in that avatar. And it creates a little bit of identity. Speaking of identity, Jessica, if you can add on a little bit about how you build the games, but I also saw a question come in. And Jessica, that was around, as you're building these games, are you seeing that it's attracting a certain group, or are executives also suddenly saying, you know what, I may be a CEO, but I play games? Jessica?
I think it really depends on the game, right? I think Mary did a marvelous job about talking about building the CTFs. But I think this is where I think we try to build the experience, right? And the game is just one piece of it. To really have a game that offers an experience, we need shoutcasters, we need a fan base, we need the excitement, we need the music, we need the feel, we need the merchandise. It's kind of creating that sport feel to it, that esport feel. But in terms of what we see, that's a really interesting question. I will say that we launched the US Cyber Games this year, right? And we saw a lot of the same kind of folks. We had diversity at about 30%, which is about market average, if you will. We'd love to see more. And I think that's where we started offering like cyber exhibits. We went to a track meet in Chicago, an actual indoor track meet. And yes, there was snow on the ground outside. And we were taking some of the fastest athletes in the nation and putting them on a computer and having them solve some problems in cryptography, having them do some reconnaissance. And it was demystifying for them, because to them, cybersecurity is this huge thing. There's no way they can afford or have the time to learn, because they're practicing and they're training for their athletic event. But then they got to get hands-on, and they're like, this is pretty cool. Some of them got extremely competitive because of the points that they could accumulate, right? And they were in it. And these are people that they don't play on the computer all the time. They're not in the STEM classes, right? They're out there on the track. So I think it attracts, we have an opportunity through games to attract a lot more people, such as executives. But I also think that if you look at the history of cybersecurity games, which really hit its market space around 10 years ago, that means we have a generation that now is probably in their 30s, approaching 40s, that love to play games all the time, which I think is exciting.
Absolutely. And I think, the historical lesson that you went into as well was very important. It reminded me of an existentialist statement, which is, I play, therefore I am. I lie, it's I think, therefore I am. But, playing is the new thinking. So, Jessica, absolutely, very well said. And I think what's even important in all of this is to also recognize the fact that through game, you can bring not just diversity from a representation standpoint, but diversity of thought, diversity of skill, diversity of ideas.
Absolutely.
And that, to the audience that's watching this conference, I've been a part of Canadian Women in Cybersecurity since its inception in 2020, and I've been a part of Beyond Borders since its inception as well. And one of the things that I've always stressed upon is that diversity is not just about representation. It's about other elements as well.
Yep.
And what's even more important to our audience, and I say this very, very strongly, it's not just about who you bring to the table, but how much agency and voice do they have? How much are you listening to those diverse positions? So, Jessica and Mary, thank you, for sharing these experiences, because it shows you're following a very important rule, which is you're listening to what people can do and their skills, and you're listening to understand. So thank you for everything that you do. We've got about 15 odd more minutes. And Mary, I want to come to you and build on that question that Jessica explained so well. Mary, in terms of diversity and the different games you can bring to the table, how do we, through games, how do we account for, let's say, and I know I'm going totally off script, but that's just me, and you're super at this, so we'll continue. Mary, how do we account for, let's say, people with different learning abilities, or for neurodiversity with gaming? Have you seen anything in that where you're seeing new types of groups coming forward into cybersecurity as well, who may learn differently?
Oh yeah, so they've always been there.
Yeah.
They just may not have been vocal, right? There's a few folks that they're a part of the neurodiverse crews, and I had no clue until they started to say that they were. So it isn't like they haven't been there, right? But just because they think differently doesn't mean they shouldn't be there.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? Like, that's their thought process could actually help you win, could actually help you think outside of the box and do that. So for me, and from what I've seen in our organization, it's very welcome. Doesn't matter if you're on the spectrum, off the spectrum, if you're Black, white, Asian, male, woman, non-binary, it doesn't matter. We're all going to be on a team. We're going to work together. We're going to find what our strengths are and what our weaknesses are, and we're going to adjust for that purpose.
Fantastic. And once again, I think not only is it important to recognize this in terms of how diverse this concept of diversity is, but also to all of the leaders that are watching. If these concepts around neurodiversity, especially if you're doing training and awareness programs, if these are concepts that you're not familiar with, seek help. I know, for example, in this conference, we have a group called Human, which is a cybersecurity recruitment body, which is formed in a sort of a partnership between Phelps as well as the folks at CyberX, and they provide that kind of coaching as well. If you are a coach and you need coaching, there's absolutely no shame in saying that, because these are concepts that we need to tackle. So, Mary, thank you for that very open and clear explanation. Jessica, a quick question that I saw pop in, and this is around, the structures of games and the importance of a game master. When I've run a couple of these games, you need to have someone that's there who's sort of controlling the game. but then also allowing folks to have a little bit of fluidity through the game. How difficult is it to train one of those game masters?
Are they trained or are they born? Are they born or trained?
Many existential questions that promise to send us into an existential angst. I know Descartes would be very happy of this conversation. Jessica, back to you.
Yeah, no, I think, so remember earlier we were talking about creating that experience, and the game master is controlling that experience, right? And they kind of make those last second calls to make it more human, to make it more enjoyable, and to make it more real. And the more realistic it can be, or crazy at times, which is more realistic, the more fun it can be. So when you're recruiting a game master, I think I look for a coolness factor, I'll be honest, a technical factor, but also heart.
Yeah.
Right. You want them to have the game objective, the goal, the ultimate, this is why we're here kind of thing in mind as they orchestrate that day. But I do wonder, some are better than others. I'm not sure you can train them.
I think you're born with it. You know, if you go back to Wicked 6, 2019, and we had Joy and Chris, like they just worked with that game and explaining things and the personality and, you know, and they were able to control how that game was viewed. And it was really awesome.
That was an interesting one on diversity. Remember, we required each one of the teams to have a girl that actually actively played on the team. And we had one of the players come up to us afterwards and explain how that impacted their team, because I believe she was older, right, than the rest of them, and she was on the team, and they were struggling with a problem, and they had been working it for hours, and she had them take a totally different approach to problem solving, and it helped them get through it. And that really brought their team together, and they realized that it wasn't because she was a woman, it was because she brought a diverse background of how to solve a problem. And that might, you know, be contributed by the fact she was a woman, but the point was that she took a different approach, which was great. And they loved it. They loved having, and you see that a lot. You see it with DEF CON as well. Constructing games that have factors that aren't technical that help create challenges or experiences. Yeah. Right? Whether you're turning the lights off and the music up loud, whether you're saying you're only allowed 5 people at the table at one time, you know, whatever those rules are that make it fun, because it's all about problem solving and getting around the challenges and making it more realistic that way. It's just, it's all about the experience. And I got to tell you, kudos to everybody out there. There are some awesome, particularly at the universities and colleges all over the world, that are getting so creative with these games, and they're professors, they're not paid for it, they're doing it out of their heart, and just, you know, hats off to them.
Absolutely. I still remember also hosting CPTC, and we had to do it entirely virtual, and we did in collaboration with IBM, and it was just phenomenal to look at how many professors from across North America volunteered their weekends. We were given a lot of food by Uber Eats, so thank you, organizers and sponsors. But point is that they all put in the time, and forget the fact that just creating the games, then marking the responses as well. Right. It's a labor of love, as Maddie Raza from CyberX often says. So I do agree with you there. And, you know, speaking about diversity in teams when you're looking at a problem, you know, I've always said this in my classes, that if you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And when you bring in a different perspective, you know, it allows you to look at a problem from a different lens altogether. Now, that's not to say a couple of the teams that brought me in, they never ended up winning. But hey, the importance about playing games is that you got to play. All right, so remember that. You got to play. So just, you know, stay in your lane there. All right, another 10 more minutes, and we'll come to a soft landing. Mary, I want to come to you. You made reference to Wicked 6, and you made reference to a couple of scenarios. Can you tell our audience a little bit about some of these competitions that you're running? And, you know, since we have about 10 minutes left, tell them a little bit about how they can get involved, what's happening next. Give us a little bit of an introduction to that.
So Wicked Six was, Jessica came to me and was like, hey, I have this idea. Because she's the strategist, I'm the doer, right?
Yep.
And I was like, okay, what is it? And she said, let's do this thing with esports and cyber. And I was just like, because I'm not a gamer like that. I'm not into esports, and my husband is, but I'm not.
We can still be friends, Mary, but carry on.
Right. I told you I play Mario and I play like Tetris games. That's what I play. And so she was like, yeah, we should do this event. And it can be a fundraiser and it'll be cool and fun and yada, yada, yada. And I was like, all right, Jessica, sure. What do you need me to do? And as that was built, as we went through the process of creating that, developing that, executing that, it was fantastic. It was here in Vegas at the HyperX Arena. So you got to see firsthand people on stage, finding vulnerabilities, fixing issues, working together as a team. And to see that come together and to see the teams working together, they did a policy challenge, which was really cool. They had some time to go and like figure out what the vulnerabilities were. It wasn't just about the game. We were teaching these college students real life skills that they're going to use when they get out of school.
Yeah.
You know, it didn't matter who won, right? So it was a pretty awesome experience. We had a great team for it. And then COVID happened, of course. Mm-hmm. And we're having Wicked Six Global Edition. Women, ladies from around the world. We want 1,000 women to come and play in Discord on various games throughout 24 hours. It's going to be presenters, and I'll let Jessica get into details, but there's going to be presenters, there's going to be prizes, there's going to be walkthroughs and demos, and it's just a way for whether you're new to cybersecurity or really inexperienced in cyber completely, or if you're older like me, you know, I've been in the industry for a long time, I've been technical, but I can probably play the easier games and still probably not win.
Yeah.
But it gives everyone an opportunity, no matter their level, to be a part of this cool thing. And there's some cool swag. Jessica's team makes some really cool swag. So
swag's important. I'll tell you that much. Sometimes it's just even those t-shirts, and then suddenly you start a movement of t-shirts. A very simple example is that this conference started around with a simple hashtag called We Are Cyber. And that's become the rallying cry for many of us. And it's brought up, interesting concepts about don't just call things out, call things in, and evolving different strategies. So Mary, absolutely swag, branding around this, as Jessica mentioned earlier on, and bringing together some form of an identity. Now, Jessica, I want to come to you on this aspect of, because Mary spoke about, you've taken the local and gone global. Well done. Good on you. Can you tell me a little bit? I'm going to rephrase this question just a bit, and I can take the liberty of asking this in all seriousness because I grew up in the Middle East. I'm part of the South Asian diaspora in the Middle East, and now the South Asian diaspora in Canada. Have you found that these games and these opportunities have also brought underrepresented groups, let's say women from the Middle East, who are extremely powerful in cybersecurity? We've heard from a couple of them in sessions prior to this one. Has it brought you to network with folks and diverse groups that you typically probably wouldn't have engaged with?
I totally hope so. I'll be honest with you, this will be the first time we do this global event. And we're doing it because getting more women into cybersecurity is not a US problem, it's a global problem. And a global
on a shirt. Well said.
Yeah, and it's a global opportunity, and so we're really hoping. So part of the U.S. Cyber Games, we interact with the International Cybersecurity Challenge, which is 8 other regions that compose 64 countries. And when we talk about bringing more women to the team, because across 64 countries that compose these 9 teams, you're talking there's maybe 5 women.
Wow.
Right? So they need more women. It's not that they're discouraging, not selecting, that kind of thing. We need more women in the program that are open to playing cyber games. So this year, because of the pandemic, we were going to go virtual. Mary and I were talking when I came back from the finals in Europe and said, if this is a global issue, then why not use Wicked Six to go global and help the entire community? And it's a 24-hour follow the sun format. The beauty of this is some of the sessions are not even in English.
Yeah.
And they're going to be at 2 a.m. our time, right? Because we want sessions all around the clock so that every region can have daylight time where they're talking about cybersecurity in their native tongue, and they're trying these games out. And that's the exciting point. And we're hoping that that encourages more women to partake, and be part of something and really get on Discord. Let's talk about that for a second. Games are held on Discord. If you're afraid of Discord or haven't used Discord or just a little hesitant, that's going to stop you from playing games. So we're hoping to get more women into that. So 1,000 women is our goal. So far as of this morning, we have over 300 signed up. We still got another 24 days to go, 23 days to go. No, I guess less than that now, but we have 24 countries already, and a wonderful group of speakers, a diverse advisory board. We're hoping to start something here where women can play more games. The other thing is, how often are other countries utilizing games? And what games are they utilizing? It's fascinating being in that global discussion. In the US, we focus a lot on Windows, for example, which is a very expensive software program. When you go global, they do very little Windows. It's hard to hold a policy competition internationally if you think about all the different regulations and perspectives and definitions. So I think these games not only can encourage more people into cyber, but I think what we're doing is building relationships now internationally around some cybersecurity global concepts, which I think are going to be needed. And I think games are not only changing the students, they're changing the teachers. And they're allowing more nations to tap into cybersecurity training through these games, such as, all these different companies are offering, and through online learning that they didn't have opportunities to before. So I think we're on the cusp of a revolution in cybersecurity training, and I'm very excited to see where it goes.
Me too.
And don't credit this to all the Narcos episodes that I've watched, but in Latin America, there was often a saying that every revolution begins with a thought. So thank you to the two of you for this thought of gamifying cybersecurity. And I will say this is that, it really resonated with me when you said, if you're scared of, for example, getting on Discord, you need to overcome that to some degree, right? As my mother always says, you need to get out of your own way, and you need to empower people in order to do that. So, Jessica, I thank you for everything that you do. But more importantly, when we were talking in the green room about, what's esports, cyber, etc., I know as a result of this conference, you're probably going to have some very in-depth conversations very shortly with Maddie, Mark Dillon, and the likes who are championing this. And I really, really am looking forward to what kind of partnerships emerge from there. So really quick, ladies, we've got about 2.5 to 3 minutes. I promised you 45 minutes. And I know that the audience also very shortly has another session, and then they're going into a career village with WISIS Ontario, I believe. So in 2.5 minutes, Mary, I know this is off script. I'm going to put you on the spot because it's just how we do. And we've done very well. We've rolled with the punches. Mary, is there a book or a personality that has impacted you as you've gone into this really unique journey in cybersecurity? You can say Jessica. That's totally fine, because she's.
I was going to say Jessica's one of them.
No.
I've learned a lot of stuff from Jessica since she's been on our board. Geez, you're gonna put me on the spot, man. So there's a book by Brene Brown, Dare to Lead.
You stole mine.
Did I? Oh man. No, I read it, and I read this later on because when I was first coming into the industry, I was not doing like those kind of books. I was doing like super technical things, but reading that book helped me to start to walk into my purpose when it came to cybersecurity, when it came to running an organization, when it came to helping other women and other minorities, navigate this space. So Brene Brown, Dare to Lead. Actually, I think all of her stuff is pretty good, especially if you listen to it on Audible, because she's reading it and she's like Southern and really cool.
I think, one of the things, I think it's such an important point where you say, listen to when she's reading it. As professionals in this space, and I say this to a lot of folks, those who are watching, those who are aspiring to get into this space, the ability to not just know how to manage the technical side, but also know how to communicate, how to manage your voice, how to, position your body language as well. I've always said this, that, there's no shortage, and perhaps I might be wrong from a quantitative perspective, but I've always said that, there's no shortage of pen testers, but there's a shortage of a pen tester who can communicate well. Who can engage well. And that's something that I hope definitely resonated with me. So Mary, thank you for that suggestion. Jessica, you've been wonderful. Thank you for everything to teach us, to learn. And boy, have you taught me a thing or two today. Jessica, a book or two or a personality, besides Mary, of course, that has influenced you in this unique journey that you are on.
Which she absolutely has. There's so many. I was going to say Renee Brown. I will go a different tactic and say one of the key things I think to do in cybersecurity as a professional is to stay sharp. And I do that by watching some of the wonderful cybersecurity streamers out there. Hats off to Neil and Jax and Gerald out there, but also to Bob Gorley and the Cyberwire that do a fantastic job of keeping our community in touch with what's happening. I've got to say, I just realized a name, Chris Kowabeka. Hats off to that lady who, braved Ukraine in the early days and brought the message to us via LinkedIn every way she could. She is a leader in the cyber community, and to see her on the front lines of this very important event that will change our lives, I'm sure. We'll be talking about it for decades to come. But it's more people like them that we need in our community because, we need to find truth. And to be part of this living, breathing community of hackers, our tribe.
They say that amateurs hack systems and professionals hack people. And this is why you really, really need to focus on the people aspect of security. And thank you well and truly for focusing on the people component of cybersecurity, focusing on the community side of cybersecurity, and closing with such impactful words about the state that we find ourselves in today. Regardless of which side of the fence you're on, there's a lesson for all of us in different ways. So thank you for doing that and making my job easier, Mary and Jessica, for just flowing with this conversation and ensuring that within 45 odd minutes we've delivered more than just a punch. I do see a note from the streaming team telling me, "Hey, Ali, read your agenda properly. This is the last item in the agenda." I'm sorry, I haven't had lunch yet. But yes, after this, I believe is the career urge. But don't go by what I'm saying. Go by the agenda that's there on cyberexchange.ca. Jessica, Mary, once again, thank you so much for your time. I'm going to ask you to stay on just as I bid the audience adieu, and then we'll come to a conclusion. Once again, Jessica, Mary, you were awesome, super rock stars. So that the audience knows, I just messaged them randomly a couple of days ago and they said, "Sure, let's do it." And here we are. We had 4 or 5 questions and we'll just talk about it. And look what happened. So thank you so much. To our audience, thank you for joining on cyberexchange.ca, and thank you for joining Beyond Borders. Happy International Women's Day. What's one thing that I can leave you with at the end of all of this? If I borrow from what Jessica had said and her reference to the state that we find ourselves in right now, life isn't just about what you have achieved, it is about what you have overcome. And I'm sure today you've learned a lot of stories of people who have overcome a lot of challenges and are successes in cybersecurity and are giving back. Be like these individuals. Thank you all for tuning in. Stay safe wherever you are. Stay healthy. And as Jessica and Mary had said, stay sharp. This is Ali Hirji wishing you a wonderful remainder of the conference. Thank you.